Hi everyone, it's awfully warm for October today. I just got finished watching Christmas Carol, which I hadn't yet seen. I'd seen all the Robert Zemeckis movies from Romancing the Stone onward in a theater, but I didn't bother seeing Christmas Carol. So I just got finished watching it now in addition to rewatching Beowulf. So I wanted to talk about the 3 performance capture animated movies that Zemeckis did for this last video before I actually see Flight and review it for Friday's final Zemeckis episode. A little background of performance capture. You know, it's probably you're probably aware that it's been used on movies like Lord of the Rings for Gollum, and Watchmen for Dr. Manhattan, and Avatar, Dead Man's Chest. You know, all the Davy Jones characters, all the Davy Jones guys are all performance capture. But that's largely done on the set. A lot of it is, anyway. With the performance capture animated movies, such as The Polar Express and Beowulf and Christmas Carol, they use something which is called the volume, which is a big room, big empty room, a studio, with all kinds of sensors all over the perimeter of it, aiming towards the middle, where the actors perform. And the actors wear basically a skin-tight suit with sensors all over it, and a camera mounted on a, you know, sort of like a microphone extension right here in front of their face to capture all their mouth movements and tongue movements and eye movements and nostril movements and what have you. So all this information which is recorded while they perform is then processed by a computer and then applied to a CG character, which then, you know, is what you see in the actual film itself. Zemeckis, the first film that he did like this was The Polar Express, which came out in 2004. It's based on a children's book. The story involves a kid who is doubting the existence of Santa Claus, and so one night before Christmas, a train pulls up in his neighborhood and he gets on board and takes a ride to the North Pole to meet Santa Claus so he can believe in Santa Claus. Along the way, he meets the conductor and a bunch of other kids that are going with him, and a hobo sitting on top of the train, and a puppet character. It's been a while since I've seen this movie. I didn't re-screen it for this series. But what I remembered of it is that the story is very, very slight, and it's gussied up with a lot of really spectacular scenes of the train rocketing across a frozen lake and traveling up a mountain and traveling down a big steep incline and what have you. And then of course it arrives in Santa's village, where there's all kinds of people there, and Santa comes out with the reindeer and everything like that. So it's a very visually rich movie. I went to see this in the IMAX 3D theater because I'd read basic reviews saying the only way to see this movie is in IMAX 3D. It's so much more worthwhile than watching a regular theater and being bored by it. You might still be bored by the story, but you would... it's a much more of a feast for the eyes. And I got to admit, the IMAX 3D version of this is pretty great because the CG characters really look like solid objects. It really takes on a solidity with the 3D. I always think that animated 3D looks a lot better than live action 3D. With live action 3D, it looks more like you've got a flat surface here, and then a flat surface there, and a flat surface there, and it's just like levels of flat surfaces extending into the background, whereas animated CG 3D looks, so much more like actual real dimensions rather than just cards, cards at varying distances from you. Tom Hanks plays not only the conductor and several other characters, he also plays the kid. The voice of the kid is done by a child actor, but he does, the kid body movements, I guess. And I always wondered why that was. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. At this point, the performance capture human characters really aren't that sophisticated. I mean, they're plenty sophisticated, but not quite good enough to pass for real. Or they don't really have the charm of those purely animated movies that you'll find in, Ice Age or the Pixar films or what have you, Wreck-It Ralph or what have you. The problem is that animated characters that have been animated right from the get-go, they have sort of an exaggerated style of their movements and their facial expressions, what have you. Whereas with the CG characters, you've got a clearly not real thing that is acting like a human being. The facial expressions are much more subtle, and so it doesn't really match the form, I guess you could say. It just doesn't look quite right. The eyes don't look quite right. The eyes need to be nice and big in order to to really convince. So one good thing about Avatar is the fact that all the Na'vi characters had really, really big eyes, very expressive. Whereas something like this is just like the eyes are a little bit too small. You can't get a good read on, the subtleties of the movement, what have you. Although there are a couple of really nice moments in Beowulf. I'll get to that in a little bit. So the Polar Express is something which I would say, yeah, for a spectacle, seen in IMAX 3D, except it's been gone from the theater for many years now, so I wouldn't bother with that. In 2007, Beowulf was released. It's based on an old legendary story. It's set in Europe centuries ago, involves a kingdom that is ruled by Hrothgar, who's played by Anthony Hopkins, and his wife, who's played by Robin Wright. And they have this little problem with a local monster called Grendel. They'll be having a good time in their mead hall, drinking and dancing and singing and generally living it up. But Grendel, way off in his cave, off in the neighboring, town or whatever, or, out in the wilderness, is very, very sensitive to noise. This Grendel character is so incredibly disgusting looking. He's just this malformed creature that's so sad, and it has, instead of a left ear, it has like this exposed eardrum, which is very, very sensitive. So even though they're like miles away, and there's this great shot that travels from the village all the way to the cave, and even though they're miles away and you can barely hear them, Grendel's sensitive ear picks up all the people in the mead hall going, Hrothgar, 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 making lots of noise, and it's so infuriated and it can't sleep, and so it runs all the way to the village and breaks in and starts killing a whole bunch of people. It's incredibly gory for a PG-13 movie. People getting ripped in half and impaled on spears and all kinds of stuff, heads being bitten off. It's amazing. Just rivers of blood cascading everywhere. It's crazy. So the king obviously is upset about this, as is everyone else in his kingdom. They're like, well, what are we going to do? This monster, we can't celebrate. We can't do anything. We can't live it up with this creature running around, killing all of our people whenever we have a celebration. So he puts out the word saying, we need a hero in our kingdom to destroy the monster for us. And Beowulf is this warrior who answers the call. He comes with all of his men. He's sort of a Viking type. They call him a Geat, I think. I'm not really sure what country that is. But he comes along and says, I'll take care of your monster. I fought many monsters before. And the king's right-hand man, who's played by John Malkovich, is really like, oh, really, huh? Well, what are some of the monsters you've killed? He says, well, I killed sea serpents, and I killed this monster and that monster. And he has this whole tale where he's engaged in this swimming contest with another guy, and a bunch of creatures converge and attack them, and he kills every last one of them, in this really exaggerated story. So like, okay, well, Beowulf, this is great. That's fantastic. And could you kill this monster for us? He's like, absolutely. So he has everyone open the mead hall and start making noise again, so the creature comes, and then he fights the creature and he rips its arm off, and the creature runs off and crawls away to die. Oh, I don't think I mentioned this. The creature is actually played by Crispin Glover. Crispin Glover, who played George McFly in the Back to the Future movies. There was some discordant relations between him and the makers of the Back to the Future sequels, because they used old footage of him, and they used a body double and then someone in prosthetic makeup to make him look like this. Even though he didn't have anything to do with that movie, they used footage of him, and he sort of sued, I guess he sued Universal, and he got the rules changed so that a movie company couldn't use footage of an actor without actually paying him, even though it was shot for a movie that he had already made. That's why Uma Thurman got paid twice for each Kill Bill movie, even though it was supposed to be one movie. When they split it into two movies, technically she should have gotten paid twice, so she got two salaries for that. Anyway, things obviously have been patched up between him and Zemeckis for him to participate in this. The creature is just really, really sad and just disgusting, and the funny thing about it is that while the human characters don't look quite real, because their faces don't move quite the right way or their eyes don't look right, Grendel looks more real than any of them, because he's got his exaggerated features of an animated character. But I say the exception to this, as far as the animated characters go, is the Angelina Jolie character, who of course is Grendel's mother. She is this demoness, basically, this part lizard creature, who seduced Anthony Hopkins' king years ago and gave birth to Grendel, who's now terrorizing them. So when Beowulf goes to kill the mother, she pulls the same stunt on him. He can't use his sword on her, it just passes right through her. He doesn't have any physical power against her. She says, like, I'll leave your kingdom alone as long as you grant me a son. Look, my son's dead. You killed my son, so give me another son and I'll leave you alone. Well, of course, unfortunately, this just leads to more trouble. I like this story a lot. I think that it's really good, and I think a lot of the acting is really good. I appreciate the fact that they used a bunch of different actors for the various characters rather than one guy playing a whole bunch of different people. I think that's kind of the way to go here, because you've got a variety of vocal tenors at the very least. Robin Wright's character is one of the more real-looking characters. She's got some good eye reactions. Something that you notice if everyone's eyes aren't looking quite right is the characters whose eyes do look right. And Malkovich has some funny moments as well. And Ray Winstone, who plays Beowulf, you probably remember him from The Departed. He played Jack Nicholson's right-hand man, Mr. French. He's got this very sort of gruff voice, you know, talks like this all the time, you know. So he's kind of a portly guy, so the character he plays is like 6 feet tall and blonde and super cut and everything like that. So I remember reading an article about him. It's like, this performance capture is great, man. You could play a bird or a falcon or a wolf if you wanted to. So yeah, all in all, pretty successful movie. Good story, and really like the way that it unfolds, and there's a lot of spectacular scenes in it as well. One complaint that I have about it, which I think is kind of silly, is that I guess to remain true to the story, Beowulf decides that he's going to fight Grendel without any swords or armor or any clothing of any kind. So you've got this Austin Powers scene where you've got fog and various other objects blocking his crotch at various moments as he's fighting the beast. It's a little bit silly looking. But all in all, very, very good film. The Christmas Carol is the one that I hadn't seen in the theater, because I'd seen A Christmas Carol, versions of A Christmas Carol several times before. Just to name a couple, there's the Bill Murray version called Scrooged, and there's the Muppets version with Michael Caine playing Scrooge. So I knew basically the story. I didn't bother to see it in the theater because I figured, you know, Jim Carrey playing all the different parts again, you know, just wasn't really something that I was interested in. Actually, I don't know that Jim Carrey has actually done that in a movie before. I know Eddie Murphy has, of course, and Tom Hanks did in Polar Express. But in this version of the story, Jim Carrey plays Scrooge, and he plays the ghost of Christmas past and Christmas present and a few other characters as well. In addition to that, you've got Colin Firth playing his nephew, and you've got Robin Wright, again, playing a supporting part. Bob Hoskins is in it. And Gary Oldman plays Bob Cratchit, who is, of course, Tiny Tim's father and the guy who works in Scrooge's shop. Now, the story, if you're not familiar with it, is Scrooge is this miserly old guy who runs a money-changing firm. And he's very, very stingy, and he doesn't give time off or anything like that. And he just doesn't like Christmas at all, and the merriment. He sees no purpose in it whatsoever. You know, what's the point of, you know, having a day off of work? You know, where you're not actually producing anything and making money. It doesn't make sense to him. And so he's visited by the ghost of his former partner, who's also played by Gary Oldman, and told that 3 ghosts will visit him, show him his past, show him his present, and show him his potential future, to show how his life has played out and what is possibly in store for him if he keeps being this crotchety old guy who doesn't have a friend in the world or anyone who really cares about him. So the ghosts, when they visit him, take him basically on this journey in which he flies through the air and sees all these different places and all the different people, you know, from his past and the other people who know him now and what could happen to him in the future. Now, I really wasn't crazy about seeing this movie for a second reason, that is because I'd seen little bits of it and it looked like just a lot of pointless scenes of them flying around just for the sake of spectacle. And that's certainly the case here. But in addition to that, you've also got Jim Carrey playing the Ghost of Christmas Past and Present. I really don't like his performance as either of these characters a lot. The Ghost of Christmas Present is basically a Santa Claus type, who's this big guy with a big beard and a big robe, and he just laughs constantly. Oh! Gets really, really irritating after a while. When he flies him around, he basically just takes him in a bird's eye view of town all over the place, and there's this long scene of him flying this way and that and overlooking everything, and it just goes on for a really long time. Now, The Ghost of Christmas Past, that's a better sequence. There's an 11-minute long sequence without any conventional cuts in this, where the ghost takes him from his apartment and to his childhood hometown and to his school and to see his sister and everything like that, and all these different places that he goes and meets the woman that he fell in love with and married, and then she leaves him, and this whole scene takes place in a series of very clever transitions, where you're always focused on one particular character, but there's no actual cuts to different angles. It's just the big, long, swooping camera move, and it's 11 minutes long. I can't imagine how much time it took to render something like that. I mean, each shot takes a long time to render in order to get all the detail there. But that one was just insane, just really insane. Again, though, Jim Carrey's performance as the Ghost of Christmas Past, he's like Tinkerbell, except made entirely out of flame. And he speaks in a soft whisper, "You must learn from your past. I am showing you what..." And I'm just like, will you please stop with this? Oh my God, I couldn't stand the character. Plus, the face kind of looks like Jim Carrey, but wreathed in flame. It's just, I don't know, just a little irritating looking. I like the design of the Scrooge character. The Scrooge character is very expressive. Not all the human characters in A Christmas Carol look all that good, but the Scrooge character looks really good. They've exaggerated his nose and his chin, and Jim Carrey's got a very expressive face, so it works really well. Yeah, some of the other characters he played in wasn't big on that. I really like the design a lot. All the different rooms, the buildings, the environments, they all look really, really great. I kind of wish that I had seen it in the theater just so I could look at all that stuff. But again, there's a lot of filler in this story just for the sake of spectacle. There's sequences where he's being chased around all over the place, or he's flying through the air, rocketing under bridges and through buildings and over the top of stuff, and just takes up a lot of extra time. The Ghost of Christmas Future is like this a shadow on the wall. It's like his own shadow suddenly turns into the ghost and points at things. Doesn't say anything, just says, points in different directions. Look over here, look at this thing, this is significant. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. But then, of course, Zemeckis can't leave well enough alone. He's got to have the ghost mount this carriage with these ominous-looking horses with red eyes that chase Scrooge all over the place, and then Scrooge shrinks down to this tiny version of himself and starts crawling through pipes and being picked up by birds and chased around by rats and stuff like that. I'm just like, what is the point of all this? This is just delaying the story, Spectacle for the sake of spectacle. So, although I liked it better than I thought I would, still wish that, I still didn't think that it was all that good. Here's another thing that I was curious about. Not really a complaint, but it's just a little odd. In the volume, there aren't any actual cameras. The studio where they do the performances, it's just them in this empty space, and their movements are picked up by sensors. In the last scene of the movie, Gary Oldman, as Bob Cratchit, turns the camera and starts talking directly to the audience. I'm thinking to myself, well, what is he looking at? If there are no cameras in the volume, what is it that he's actually looking at in order to get that eye contact with the viewer? They must have had something on a stick, like a target for him to look at, and then made the camera, they decide all the camera moves after all the performances are done. They say, we're going to have a camera up here, whatever, and they just figure out all that stuff after the actors have done all their work. So choreographing something like that might have been difficult. But again, choreographing a lot of this stuff must have been difficult, especially with all the swooping transitions between locations. Anyway, I was more impressed by that than I thought I was, but still I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. There's other better versions of the Christmas Carol, though probably none as spectacular. Anyway, performance capture, Zemeckis. Thankfully, he's back from all that. He's back to making live-action movies again. Hopefully, he'll continue doing that for a while. I don't know what his next movie is going to be after Flight, but Flight, of course, is live-action. Denzel Washington and another good cast of people like John Goodman, Bruce Greenwood, Don Cheadle. Really looking forward to seeing this movie. I'm looking forward to seeing him in person. That's going to be tomorrow night. And then Friday, I'll have the video up and I'll tell you all about it. So I hope you tune in for that. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope this video wasn't too long because I have no idea how long I've been talking. Take it easy, everybody. Bye.